Every lady needs to watch this before visiting a stranger, the whispering trees of a banjo. A young woman, full of hope and dreams, ventures into a world where trust is both a blessing and a curse. In a land where the spirits of the earth and the whispers of the trees hold secrets no one dares to speak, her journey to meet a stranger will lead her into a web of deception, danger, and wisdom. She must learn the hard way that some paths should never be walked alone. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the hills, casting a golden hue over the village of a banjo. The air smelled of earth and rain, as though the land itself was alive, breathing, waiting. It was here, in this peaceful and vibrant corner of the world, that Alma grew up. A village surrounded by forests so ancient that their roots intertwined with the very soul of the land. The villagers spoke of the forests as though they were sacred, places where the spirits of ancestors resided, and where the trees themselves held the wisdom of centuries. Alma was young, full of life and energy. With skin the color of rich soil, dark eyes that sparkled with curiosity, and a smile that could light up even the gloomiest of days, she was beloved by everyone. She had an easy way about her, always helping the elders, dancing with the children, and lending a hand with the harvest. Yet, despite her joy, there was a restlessness inside her, a longing for something beyond the borders of a banjo, something beyond the comforting rhythm of village life. One evening, as Alma walked home from the market, she overheard a conversation between two women near the entrance of the village. "Have you heard of him?" one of the women whispered, her voice barely audible. "Babatunde. He's arrived from the city, and they say he's offering work to anyone willing to help him. Word is, he has a fortune to share with those who are brave enough to assist him on his farm." "A fortune?" The second woman chuckled softly. "Where did he come from? Why did he come here?" The first woman leaned closer, as though the very mention of Babatunde's name might summon him into their midst. "I don't know, but I hear he has a big house, a fine carriage, and plenty of gold. And he's looking for someone to work with him. He's said to give his workers a reward, better than anything we've seen around here." Alma's heart skipped. Gold. A chance to leave a banjo, to find more than the simple life she had always known. Her family was kind, her friends were loyal, but the thought of an adventure, a life filled with possibilities, whispered to her like the cool breeze that swirled through the trees in the forest at dusk. That night, as Alma lay in bed, the conversation echoed in her mind. She could hardly sleep, her thoughts swirling with dreams of wealth, freedom, and a life that seemed as though it could be plucked from the pages of a fairy tale. The next morning, before the first rays of dawn, she packed a small bag, tying a scarf around her head. Her grandmother, Nana Akwasi, had told her stories of far-off lands, but she had also spoken of caution, of trusting the wrong people. Alma shook off the gnawing sense of unease. This was a chance. A chance to escape the smallness of her world and see the vastness that lay beyond. Before she could slip out the door, Nana Akwasi appeared in the doorway. Her long, silver hair was tied back in a simple knot, and her weathered face was filled with both love and concern. "Alma, where are you going so early in the morning?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. Alma paused, her heart racing. She had planned to leave without waking anyone, but now there was no way to hide her intentions. "I'm going to find Babatunde," Alma confessed, avoiding her grandmother's gaze. "I heard he has work for me. I'll make money, I'll help with his farm, and maybe I'll even have enough to send home. You know how much we need, Nana." Nana Akwasi's eyes narrowed, a glimmer of something ancient and knowing flickering in them. She took a step closer to Alma, her voice low and steady. "Child, you know the stories of the forests, don't you? The whispering trees, the spirits that guard the path. They speak in voices only a few can understand. They do not trust strangers." Alma nodded, though she hadn't fully understood the old woman's cryptic words. "You must always listen to the land, Alma," Nana continued. "The earth knows those who walk with honest feet, and those who walk with shadows in their hearts. There are paths you should never follow alone, places you should not visit, no matter the promises made. But Nana, Amma interrupted, I'm just going to help him. What harm could there be? Her grandmother's eyes softened, and for a moment, it seemed as though time itself had slowed. The world is not always as it seems, my child. Sometimes a stranger's smile hides a great danger. Trust the forest. Trust the wisdom of those who have walked the paths before you. Alma smiled, brushing off the old woman's warning with a wave of her hand. I'll be fine, Nana. Don't worry. I'll come back soon. With a hesitant nod, Nana Akwasi wrapped her arms around Alma. Be careful, child. And listen to the trees. The journey took Alma deeper into the forest than she had ever gone before. She walked for hours, the earth soft beneath her feet, the air rich with the scent of pine and damp moss. The trees seemed to close in around her, their branches swaying as though whispering secrets she could not hear. The further she went, the more she felt the presence of the forest watching her, its gaze heavy, its whispers soft but persistent. By mid-afternoon, she came to the edge of the forest and found herself at the foot of a small hill, where a large house stood, its stone walls gleaming white in the sunlight. The house was magnificent, and the surrounding grounds were lush with flowers and plants Alma had never seen before. It looked like something out of a dream, a place of wealth and comfort, the kind she had always imagined when her grandmother spoke of faraway lands. At the front gate, a tall man stood waiting. He wore a well-tailored robe of deep indigo, his skin dark and smooth as polished mahogany, and his eyes gleamed with an easy charm. His smile was warm, welcoming. The kind of smile that made you feel as though everything would be all right. You must be Alma, he said, his voice deep and rich. I've heard so much about you. Welcome, welcome. I am Babatunde. Alma blinked, taken aback by how quickly he had known her name. But she smiled and extended her hand. Thank you for having me, she said. I've heard great things about you and your work. Babatunde laughed, a sound that seemed to carry effortlessly through the air, as if the earth itself was laughing with him. Come inside. Let me show you the work I have for you. I believe you will be more than happy with it. As Alma followed him into the house, a strange sense of unease crept up her spine. The house was grand, every surface gleaming with polished wood and marble. The windows were open, letting in the light, but the shadows seemed too deep, too heavy. She brushed the feeling aside. This was it, the beginning of something new. Little did she know, the path she had chosen would soon reveal itself as far darker and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. As Alma settled into her work on Babatunde's farm, things seemed too perfect. He was kind, offering her fine meals and comfortable living quarters. Yet, the oddities began to pile up. She would sometimes hear faint whispers in the night, as if the wind itself was speaking. The trees around the house seemed unnaturally tall, their branches twisted into strange shapes, and their leaves never seemed to rustle, even when the wind blew fiercely. One night, while washing dishes in the kitchen, Alma overheard Babatunde talking to someone in hushed tones. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she crept closer, staying hidden in the shadows. She's here, Babatunde's voice said, low and dangerous. Once I have her under my spell, her energy will be mine. The trees will guide her, and she'll never suspect a thing. This time, it'll work. I will be free. Alma's blood ran cold. The air felt thick, as though the earth itself had taken a deep, uneasy breath. The man she had trusted, the one who had seemed so kind and welcoming, was not what he appeared. Alma's heart raced, and a chill ran down her spine as the words sunk in. Babatunde, the man who had promised her a life of comfort, was not the kind-hearted benefactor he appeared to be. He was a sorcerer, a man who lured innocent women into his web to drain their life force for his own selfish desires. His promise of wealth and fortune was nothing but a trap, one that would cost her everything. For the first time since she had arrived, Alma felt truly afraid. She looked around the dimly lit kitchen, her thoughts swirling. What should she do? She couldn't confront him directly, he was too powerful, and she was alone. The walls of the house seemed to press in on her, as if they too were complicit in the deception. But then, in the corner of her mind, a thought flickered, her grandmother's warning, her words like a beacon in the dark: trust the forest. Trust the trees. Alma moved swiftly to the window, her pulse pounding in her ears. The moonlight bathed the forest outside in a silvery glow, and the trees, those ancient, towering sentinels, seemed to beckon her. They were watching. They had always been watching. She remembered Nana Akwasi's words: the trees are protectors. They guard the path, and they will guide you when the time is right. Her instincts told her that she had to leave. Now. The house felt suffocating, and Babatunde's presence was no longer comforting but predatory. She glanced at the door, then back to the window, torn between her fear and the gnawing desire to escape. She crept back into her room, her heart hammering in her chest. Alma had to make a decision, and she needed to act quickly before Babatunde's magic could ensnare her. Without wasting another moment, she gathered the few belongings she had: a small bundle of clothes, a leather pouch of herbs from the village, and a knife her grandmother had given her when she was old enough to start helping in the fields. Nana had always said the knife would protect her, and now Alma understood its true meaning. Alma slipped quietly into the night, her bare feet barely making a sound on the cool stone floors of Babatunde's house. She moved like a shadow, trusting the darkness to hide her movements. As she stepped outside into the night air, the trees seemed to whisper her name, the wind lifting the strands of her hair and carrying her thoughts away. The moment she stepped into the forest, she felt the weight of the world shift. The trees, which had once seemed so intimidating, now felt like old friends, guardians, guides, silent watchers of her fate. The ground beneath her was firm, and the scent of moss and earth was rich, grounding her in the moment. She could almost hear the voices of her ancestors, whispering through the leaves. But the path ahead was not so clear. As Alma ventured deeper into the forest, she began to notice that the trees around her were not as welcoming as they had once seemed. The shadows grew thicker, the night darker. The whispers in the wind became louder, but the words were distorted, twisted. Fear gripped her heart as she realized that she was no longer just walking through a forest, but through a realm where the very essence of magic lived, and where Babatunde's spell seemed to stretch its fingers, reaching into the very heart of the earth. The trees, those once protective forces, now felt like obstacles. She had crossed an invisible line, and something was following her. The forest was not just a sanctuary now, it was a labyrinth, shifting and twisting, guiding her in ways she couldn't fully understand. The familiar path was gone, and Alma realized with a start that she had become lost. But then, as though answering her unspoken prayer, a low, melodic hum echoed through the trees. It was subtle, almost like the distant murmur of a river. Alma paused, her breath held in suspense, her heart beating faster with anticipation. The hum grew stronger, clearer, until it was unmistakable: the trees were calling her. She followed the sound, unsure of where it would lead but knowing deep down that the forest was her only ally now. The air around her seemed to grow cooler as the path narrowed, and soon she found herself in a clearing unlike any she had seen before. In the center stood a massive tree, its trunk thick and gnarled with age, its roots sprawling wide like ancient arms that reached deep into the earth. The tree seemed alive, its bark shimmered with an ethereal glow, and its leaves sparkled under the moonlight as though dusted with stardust. As Alma approached, she felt a strange warmth emanate from the tree, a quiet power that washed over her like a wave. She placed her hand against the tree's trunk, and instantly, images flashed in her mind, images of her grandmother, of the village elders, and of ancient ceremonies long forgotten. And then, a single word echoed in her mind: listen. The whispering tree spoke, its voice not of words but of understanding. Alma had heard the stories, but now she felt them as truth. The tree was an ancient being, a guardian of the land, of the balance between life and death, light and shadow. It offered her guidance, showing her the hidden paths that Babatunde's magic had obscured. The path ahead was not clear, but she understood what she needed to do. The trees would help her, but only if she trusted them. And so, with renewed determination, Alma set off toward the path the tree had shown her. As Alma walked deeper into the heart of the forest, the ground beneath her feet began to shift. The trees, once allies, now seemed to watch her with a more intense gaze. The whispers grew louder, like the voices of 1,000 ancestors speaking at once. But then, something broke the silence. A figure emerged from the shadows, Babatunde. He had followed her into the forest, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. His once charming smile was now twisted with malice, his features sharp and contorted by the dark magic that had begun to take hold of him. "You cannot escape," he said, his voice echoing through the trees. "You are mine, Alma. You always were." Alma felt a coldness wash over her. His words were poison, but she could feel the power of the trees behind her, guiding her, strengthening her resolve. The whispering tree's power coursed through her veins, filling her with the strength to stand firm. "You cannot control me," she said, her voice steady, the words laced with the wisdom of the forest. "I am not yours to claim. And I will not be your victim." Babatunde laughed, but there was no warmth in it. He raised his hands, and the shadows around him seemed to bend and stretch, swirling into a dark cloud that consumed the forest. But Alma was no longer afraid. The trees were with her. She reached out to the ancient spirits, the guardians of the forest, and they answered her call. The trees groaned and creaked, their branches twisting and shaking as though waking from a long slumber. With a mighty roar, the forest itself rose against Babatunde. The trees wrapped around him, their roots entwining his legs, their branches pushing against him. His magic faltered, and his body began to twist, his form writhing in agony as the forest rejected him. Alma stood her ground, her heart steady as she watched the sorcerer succumb to the very magic he had used to trap others. The trees, once silent watchers, now became her protectors, their roots digging deep into the earth, pulling him into the shadows from which he could never return. When the forest fell silent once more, Babatunde was gone, his dark presence erased from the land. Alma walked slowly back to the village, her heart heavy but at peace. She had faced the darkness, and with the help of the trees, she had overcome it. She had learned the importance of trusting her instincts and listening to the wisdom of the earth. When she returned to Abanjo, the villagers welcomed her with open arms. Her story became one of legend, passed down through generations, a tale of bravery, of wisdom, and of the power of the land. Alma had not only saved herself but had saved others from the dangers that lurked in the shadows. And as she walked through the village once more, the trees whispered to her, their voices now a gentle reminder that she was never truly alone. Years passed, and Alma became a wise elder of Abanjo, teaching the next generation the lessons she had learned.